Hi students, for today's math lesson we're going to be talking about telling time. So today I have with me two different types of clocks. I have this kind of clock and I have this kind of clock. And these probably look pretty familiar. We have one right over there in the classroom. That one is called an analog clock. This one is called a digital clock. Now it's important to remember that they say the same thing, they just tell us in different ways. So we're going to watch a little video about these two clocks and about telling time. So I would put the video on the smart board, but I don't have it available. So just to give you an idea, this is kind of what it is. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but it goes on for another 2.5 minutes. So after that's done, I would say that was a fun video. And so along with the parts of the clock, there's a couple of vocabulary words that we're going to go over, and I would put these up on the smartboard as well. It's important to know these terms when we're talking about clocks and telling time. So the first word, the first vocabulary term is the analog clock. This is a clock that shows moving hands to show the time. So that's just like the one in the video and in the one I showed you, that it's the round clock with the numbers written around it with these two hands. The next term is a digital clock. That's the other type of clock that I showed you. That's a clock that shows numbers, or that shows the time with numbers. Right there you can see that it says 1:30. It's pretty straightforward. You don't need to figure anything out. You just read the clock. It says it's 1:30. Now when it comes to the analog clock, there are a couple of very important parts of the clock that we need to know. And the first one is the hour hand. That is the shorthand on the clock that shows the hour. So see how there's two hands here. They're arrows. One is the short one. The other one is the long one. The hour hand is the short one, and that tells us the first part of the time, the hour. Then we have the minute hand. This is the longer hand on the clock that shows the minutes. This small one here, that's the hour hand. This long one is the minutes. Now, figuring out the minutes is kind of a tricky part of telling time. To do that, we use skip counting. Everybody knows that we've done this before. When we're skip counting, when it comes to a clock, we'll do that by fives. Skip counting is counting forwards or backwards by a number other than 1. So like I just said, we'll be counting by fives to figure out what the minute hand says. Then the last one is just time, a particular minute or hour as shown by a clock. So these are the important terms that we need to remember when talking about telling time. Then I will pass out one of these to each student. They're a wooden clock that has manipulative hands for the hours and the times. So I'll pass out one of those to each of the students. And then I'll tell them to look at the parts of the clock. This is the face part, and then we have the blue is the hour, and the red is the minutes. Then I will show a clock on the smartboard that looks like this. And again, this one is the hour, this one is the minute, and I want you to make your clock match this clock up here. So make the blue hand point to 2 and the red long hand point to 6. Now, this blue hand, that's the hour hand, it's always going to point to what hour it is, the first part, and it just says what it is. It's pointing to 2, so that means it's 2. So we know that it's 2 something. It could be 2:15, 2:45, we don't know yet. We have to use this minute hand to figure that out. So we know the first part is 2, then I don't think the minute part, even though it's pointing to 6, it's not quite right. We actually have to use skip counting to figure out what the minute hand is pointing for. And remember how I said we were going to skip count by 5s. Now we always start up here at the top of the clock. And then when we get to 1, that's when we start skip counting at 5. So I want you to all skip count with me till we get to the 6, and then we'll figure out what the minute part is. So we'll skip count. We'll say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We know that when it points to the 6, it's 30, so it's 2:30. So I want you to, this would be ready on the smartboard, have your little hand, the blue hand, point to 4, and then your big hand, your red hand, the minute hand, point to the 3. And then it'll look like this. Now I want you to skip count with me to figure what this is. But first we know that the hour is pointing to 4, so we know that it's 4 something. So let's continue, and we'll go skip count starting here, 5, 10, 15. It's 4:15. On this next one, I want your little hand, blue one, pointing to the 6, and the long hand, the minute hand, pointing to the 8. And let's skip count to figure out what time that is. So it should match this. Can everyone hold up your clock so I know that the little hand is pointing to the 6 and the big one is pointing to the 8? All right, good job. So we know that it's 6 something. The hour hand is pointing to the 6. So let's skip count to figure out what this is. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. We know that it's 6:40. So let's do one more. I want you to move that blue hand pointing to the 1. Then I want you to move the big hand pointing to the 4. So it's going to match this. So make sure your clocks match this last one. And we'll skip count. We know that the first part is 1. Let's skip count to figure out what the second part is. 5, 10, 15, 20. It's 1:20. So I want you to put your clocks away. You get to keep those at your desk. And if you need them, we can get them out at a certain time. But for now, I want you to get together with your math partners, the ones you always work with, and we're going to be doing some group work. And then I will pass out to each group, I'm going to pass out this Learning About Analog Clocks worksheet. And you're going to have to work together to figure out what these are. So once I pass this sheet out to each group, each partner group, I will have them take turns and read the directions to them. So working together, I want one of you to read each sentence, and then you're going to work together with this word bank to figure out what goes in these blanks. And then you'll alternate. The next person will do this next line, and they'll be the ones to fill this in. But whatever you put in here, I want you to work together. So this may get a little tricky because as you work through it, you'll find that not only do they want you to fill in from the word bank, you'll also have to use the picture to figure out what time it is. So please work together to figure that out. The directions say use the words in the word bank and the picture to complete the paragraph frame. So I want you to start working on that now, and I'll be going around the room to see if anybody has any questions. So as I go around, I'll see if they're all grasping the concept, and then after some time has passed and they are all complete, I will put this, it'll still be on the smartboard, and then we'll complete it together. So let's work through this together. And I'll pick each group to volunteer. So we'll go with this group here. Could you tell me what this first line says? And then they'll read, this is a picture of a, and then they would have picked analog clock. So I'll write in analog clock. The next one, and then I'll pick another team. To figure out the time, I look at the hour hand first. Then this next one is a little tricky. I hope that everybody understood what they're asking. They're asking you to figure out what these numbers are. So the hour, and then I'll pick another team. The hour is 10, what the little hand is pointing to. And next I use skip counting to figure out the minutes. So to figure out the minutes, I use skip counting on this one. And then I'll ask another team member. The minute hand shows 10 as well, 5:10, and we know that the time is 10:10. So after that is complete, I will collect the worksheets. And then it'll be time for guided practice. So I want you all to return to your desks, and I'll be passing out this Telling Time with Ricky Racer worksheet. This guided practice, so I'll be working with you all together, still making sure we understand the concept. And then after I pass it out, I'll read the directions. A clock shows that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Look at the hour hand and the minute hand to tell time. Ricky's race starts soon. What time is it now? So, they're giving you an example here. The hour hand, the short hand, is pointing to the 10, so we know that's the first part. And then we know that the minute hand, 5:10, is pointing to the 2. That means it's 10:10, just like the clock that we just saw on your group work. Now, I want you to count by 5s and write the numbers around the clock. So, let's have you all fill these out. It's pretty straightforward. All they're asking you to do is use your skip counting in order to figure out what these missing numbers are. So I'll give you some time to go through that, and then we'll fill in these together. So I'll give them some time. Then after that, we'll go through it. Now some of these are already written for you. We just need to fill in the blanks. And like I said, to do that, we skip count. So let's all do that together, and then I'll write it in here as we go through it. We already know that it's 5, 10. I'll write 15, 20, 25. This one's already for you, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and then 55. Now, this worksheet is a pretty useful tool when you have all that ready for you, ready to go. So I'm going to let you keep this at your desk while we do independent work. It will be a very useful tool. Now, if you don't need to look at it, that's okay. You don't need to. I also have the vocabulary words up on the smartboard here, so you can look at those just to remind yourself. If you find that you need to get your clocks out too, you can always do that. Remember, the blue hand is the hour hand, the short one, and the long red hand, that's the minute. So for your independent work, I'm going to pass these out and I'll have you complete this. All you need to do is write the time. In this first spot here, that will be the hour. That will be what the shorthand is pointing to. Then the second part will be what the longhand is pointing to. Remember to use your skip counting in order to complete these. And then I'll pass these out. And then if you have any questions, just raise your hand. And then I'll give them some time to work on that. And I will collect them when they're done. So if you could all pass your papers up to the front of the room, I'll grab them, and then we'll get ready. So just to remind you all that today we talked about time. We talked about the two different clocks. Can you all say with me the two different clocks? The first one is the analog clock. The second one is a digital clock. So the analog clock is the one that's round and has the hour hand and the minute hand. I want you to go home tonight and talk about your family, about how you learned how to tell time, but also how you use time in your everyday lives. Think about how important time is. It may seem like not that big of a deal, but it's kind of an important thing to keep on schedule, and you need to know what time it is in order to do certain things. So talk about that, and then when we come back tomorrow, we can talk about all the things that you use time. Thanks.